Good God, freaking Atraxa. How does someone who even has read about EDH blank on Atraxa? So I think I was trying to think of a commander that was in blue that was worth being shot down with I don't know, red elemental blast, and my brain just fell out. So here we are back at episode number 4 for the Cackling Carnarium's EDH study hall. I'm your host, Johnny Slip. We're kicking things off with yet more of the process. We're going to be starting with Blue Ward. And as I mentioned before, Blue Ward is one of these cards in the Ward cycle. This was one of the first cards they ever, this is one of those first cycles when R&D was still kind of figuring things out, and protection from a color made a difference in some cases, and that's just, it might go in an aura deck, but it's really too kind of laser focused unless you've got a really heavy blue meta for your EDH. I wouldn't, this is not, I personally won't see this as a playable for EDH. So yeah, we're going to get into more beta here. I'm going to see if we can, might go up to 20-30 minutes or so, get through some more of this. I think there's some fun cards coming up in the list. So let's go ahead and move on down the list. Bogwraith, this card was, again, a lot of, if you look at the core sets, very often there's kind of card slots that are filled by a certain CMC or a certain type of body. Bogwraith, there was a number of cards that were monochromatic. They cost 4 CMC. This is a Wraith creature. We can go to Scryfall and check out the actual stats on it. But let's see, Phantom Monster was one, Hill Giant was another one. I guess Giant Spider would count. I mean, it wasn't a 3/3, it was a 2/4 with reach. So there was it kind of nerfed the rest of them in that category. And then I can't remember what White had. We'll probably see if, I'm trying to think of what White had in the core sets that was kind of comparable to that. I don't recall any 3/3s, but there's probably something I'm forgetting. But let's see, Bogwraith. Let's check the. Let's see if my spelling is terrible. My spelling is just totally bad. All right, so the actual creature type is in fact Bogwraith. It was reprinted again in M10. Saw a number of reprintings. In fact, it was a kind of a core set staple for a very long time. But you can look here; it goes all the way back. Like, it was in Alpha and Beta. It found its way into 7th and 8th edition. It was in 10th edition. It was in 4th, 5th. Yeah, it was one of these standing, and Swamp Walk. Yes, it was one of those standing staples of the color, and Swamp Walk was one of those things that made it a bit more relevant. You could definitely put Evil Presence as one of those enchantments that was around early in the days of Magic, so you could Evil Presence someone's land, and there were a lot of Swamp Walk creatures, and that was kind of a thing. In the earliest days of Magic, you had land walking was a thing that people would try and use as a strategy, and this was kind of a vanilla creature in that camp. But ultimately, Swamp Walk never really ended up being the big bad in the long run, as many of us know. And as far as EDH goes, this is kind of a dud. I wouldn't really put this past anyone to actually play this card. Bogwraith overall is weak for what it does. And if you want to play fun, casual Swamp Walk, that's fine. But this is not the way to go for EDH, not in my opinion. Brain Geyser, on the other hand, this card is super sweet. There are this is probably the best version of an X spell that causes people to draw cards on purpose and targeted. There are other versions. I think Blue Sun Zenith is another one. They also did I'm blanking on, there's another one from the Urza block, and we'll get to it at some point. But basically this was the Mac Daddy of the cards that forces a player to draw a card, force people to draw out. So either you give yourself a big bonus, or you can force your opponent to draw cards on your turn and say you've got Black Vice in play. So this went in a Black Vice deck. So that's how that would work. This is definitely a good card for EDH. if you are looking to gain some momentum and put some more cards in your hand, if you're looking to put somebody in a bind where you have something like the Black Vice or things like Viceling or an Iron Maiden in play, these are great. I think what was it? Price of Knowledge is another one. Mono Black's enchantment kind of does a similar thing. This one for 2 blue and X, draw X cards or force opponent to draw X cards. I believe the Oracle text will probably read target player draws X cards. And this was really like, this was a power card back in the day, like when it was the only card really doing what it does. It was a big deal. Brain Geyser was a powerful card that would turn the tide of a game. And obviously, better things have been printed. Sphinx's Revelation, for instance, was definitely a card that blows this out of the water. But again, we're talking about the OG, and Brain Geyser, even in its original form, is, in my opinion, a fantastic card for EDH. So if you have access to them, I believe they had plenty of. I think let's go through cards here. Brain Geyser was printed in a number of sets, and mostly, yeah, look at that. Wow, it didn't get past revised. What do you know? I could have swore it got to at least like 4th edition, but yeah, I guess once they decided probably that it was getting too powerful. It was one of those cards where even in standard at the time, like back in the mid 90s, this was probably overdoing it. So we did see later on down the road, there were other cards that were doing similar things, but they were costing more. Prosperity would give, it was party Brain Geyser basically. And then I think there's another one, I'm blanking on the name, and it's from Urza, and it did a similar thing. It cost more, and that was just, they would add mana cost to cards that had a similar effect to try and water down the power level. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it really didn't. It was always possible to backfire, but Brain Geyser was one of the original core set staples. That was a sweet card if you're for finding one. It's definitely worth playing in EDH. Burrowing, this is a 1 red enchantment. This enchant creature, also known or aura. Target creature gains Mountain Walk. Again, land walk. Just in EDH, I don't see it as a thing that you want to waste a card slot on. This is not really something I would put into a deck. There's plenty of cards that will have Mountain Walk built in, or if you're going to go to the trouble of giving creatures on that you control Mountain Walk, you might as well be doing it with something that gives an Anthem effect, and then you go to something like Goblins. I think it's Goblin King that gives you something like Mountain Walk for all of your goblins, and that's really the way you want to go. But Burrowing was just meh. I really wouldn't put this on the must play kind of list. Camouflage, this one I want to look up Oracle text. Camouflage is kind of kooky. Camouflage is one of those things where it was like a luck of the draw combat trick, and yeah, it was. I never got to actually play the card. It looks like it was only ever printed in Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. And actually, we'll talk about this. Is a great little side-by-side. If you're watching this in video, you get to see a little bit of let's talk about what makes the difference between Alpha and Beta real quick. If you're wondering, if you see a black border card with this old look to it and you decide, oh, I don't know, is it a Beta, is it an Alpha, you always check the corners. That's the first step. If they're more rounded than a normal Magic card, that's an Alpha. And they'll usually probably be way more beat up, but anytime you see those, and usually the print run was also darker, things seemed a little more kind of blurred together when you looked at any of the Unlimiteds, Betas, Alphas. But that's the real kind of key thing to look for, is check the corners, make sure if someone's trying to tell you it's an Alpha, check in a corner, looks like a regular Magic card, like even today, it's definitely not an Alpha. You got to make sure, do your homework. But let's get into it. Let's talk about what Camouflage did. All right. So, cast this spell only during your declare attacker's step. This turn, instead of declaring blockers, each defending player chooses any number of creatures they control and divides them into a number of piles equal to the number of attacking creatures for whom that player is the defending player. What? Whom? That player is the defending player? Okay. Creatures those players control that can block additional creatures may likewise be put into additional piles. Assign each pile to different at random. What creature? Oh my god. Assign each pile to a different one of those attacking creatures at random. Each creature in a pile that can block the creature that pile is assigned to. Does this? Are you kidding? Pile can be empty. Does so. It just seems like the Oracle deck text seems more confusing than the actual original text. What the? Okay, so the original text was for 1 green at instant speed, and it is as an instant. You may rearrange your attacking creatures and place them face down. Reveal which is which only after defense is chosen. If this results in impossible blocks, such as a flying creature blocking a flying creature, illegal blockers cannot block this turn. That seemed pretty straightforward. I'm curious about why this Oracle text was set up like this. So basically, you turn your creatures face down, rearrange them, and then you go into attack steps. And then your opponent needs to decide what they're going to block with, if they're going to block, but they don't know what they're blocking with what. If they could be blocking a giant flying creature with a Llanowar elf, and the Llanowar elf just gets nerfed and the flying creature goes over. It doesn't count as blocked. So basically, it turned the combat step into a gamble. And it's a neat card. I think actually, if you're playing any kind of an aggro style deck, this is tokens are a little weird, but like if you've got a spread of creatures where there's a bunch of key different abilities and you don't want them to take advantage of the blocks, optimal blocks, you can do something like this just to kind of make it interesting. I don't know if it's the strongest card to put in, but if you are in an aggro deck, I can see this being an interesting play just to kind of mix it up, especially if they're trying to be really strategic with their blocks. So this could change things up too, especially if you've got a mix of flyings and non-flying creatures. But there it is, Camouflage. I'd say playable in EDH, but probably not the strongest. It's an interesting card. And if you get a hold of one, that's a cool one to have. I think if you can find one, that's a neat card just to have in general. All right, so after Camouflage, we go into Castle. Okay, the enchantment that gives your entire team butt breathing ish. Every untapped creature you control gain. Oh, yeah, your untapped creatures gain +0/+2. Attacking creatures loses ability this turn. Now the wording on that's interesting too. So we'll go and check that Oracle text, because that would suggest that, say, if you had something like Sarah Angel that doesn't tap when it attacks, it wouldn't keep the benefit to that bonus. So I want to go and make sure I'm understanding that one. Castle. Untapped creatures. Yeah, you see, I think they changed that. When we go to the actual newer version of Castle, which saw lots of printings and lots of different sets, but nothing modern playable. They stopped printing this back before 8th edition, so that's interesting. All right. So the Oracle text is reading: untapped creatures you control get the bonus. So that was interesting that they changed that up. I wonder if there must have been debates over the idea of creatures with, as we know today, as vigilance, or back then it would be like a Sarah Angel, being able to stay untapped but attack, with Castle saying you don't get the benefit if the creature's attacking. And it almost, like, flavor-wise, that would seem like it makes more sense. I would say that would have some more relevance. Now, as far as EDH is concerned, EDH is one of those. See, there is a card. There are 2 decks that could put Castle to good use. One of them is Door in the Siege Tower, and then the other one is Arcades the Strategist. I believe it was from M19, and that's where it did the same thing as Doran, but it was in Bant, blue, green, and white. So this would actually be a benefit to those decks where they're working with creatures that were defenders or were really like big on defense. So a lot of giant spiders would benefit from this. And if you had something like during the siege tower, or like something that an anthem ability that gave everything vigilance, then that would make a big difference. But even then, if it's sitting back blocking and something like during the siege tower, which gives all your creatures the ability to do damage with their defense power versus what their actual, like if it's an O5, it can do damage equal to its toughness. This could make it a really resilient kind of deck. Now for 4 mana, it's a 3 CM or 3 clear colorless mana and 1 white mana as an enchantment and just enchants your entire field. It really needs to have a key strategy to it. So definitely like I said, the Doran Siege Tower and the Arcades Strategist. Beyond that, I don't really see a use for this in EDH anywhere else unless you're doing something with a lot of vigilance. And that's still like, I don't know, it's a stretch. So yeah, some corner case situations where I think this card is usable, but I would probably pass on that and look for something better to do with it. Celestial Prism is next. This was in the core sets for a while. I don't believe let's see where they stopped printing it after 4th edition. So yeah, I remember I started playing Magic back in Revised. I just missed Dark. Fallen Empires was fresh out of the print. Oh god, there was so much Fallen Empires. And I did see this in 4th edition. It did seem like it never seemed like a very strong card. Like this always quickly ended up in bulk. And the only thing I can see this being useful for in EDH is if, for instance, you're doing some kind of a mana loop through sacrificing creatures to an Ashnod's altar and you need to fix the mana. That's where this might be kind of a back alley way of getting your mana fixed to do some kind of freaky infinite mana shenanigans and making sure you're fixing your mana, because you don't have to tap it. Like this card, I'll go bring it up here, make sure I'm not missing anything, but I'm pretty sure you're not tapping Celestial Prism. All right, Celestial Prism. There. See, that's why we gotta check Oracle text, because it's easy to miss this if you're not looking. All right, so here's the thing. If you see something like this is another learning experience here. If you find yourself running across a card like this and you're like, oh neat, this is as pay 2 and provides 1 mana of any color. This uses ability played as an interrupt. Great, that's awesome. Well, you see, back in these old sets, they had mono artifact. It was mean a one-time use thing. It meant tap, basically. So what we have here, this is why we check Oracle text on things like this, especially the old cards. You have to tap. You pay 2 and tap, add 1. This card is, yep, that's why. Because the versions I saw, I remember seeing, were the ones where it says pay 2 and tap. And that's why. Oh, and this is fun too, because you see they decided, oh, we need to indicate that it needs to be tapped here. They went to revise. They had a tilted T. So I like to say the T stands for tilt, because nobody likes the revised white border cards. And then when we get to 4th edition over here, they ended up changing this out. Oh, yeah, was that Summer Magic? It looks like a Summer Magic. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that at some point. Summer Magic was an interesting way they tried to fix revised and like the way it looked. So yeah, you get to 4th edition, then you have the little tap symbol, and that's something that I think we're used to seeing that these days. So Celestial Prism, they fixed it. I think people were probably getting confused and trying to use that and break it, and now you can't break it. So Celestial Prism is a 3 mana artifact. You pay 2, you tap it to add 1 mana of any color. There's definitely better mana rocks for fixing, and I wouldn't play this in EDH. So there. Good thing we're checking the Oracle text. All right, moving on. Celestial Prism. Where else are we? I think now is a good time to channel. All right. So channel. One of the cards closely associated with Black Lotus. If everybody knows what Black Lotus is, they know that Black Lotus was, and Channel was one of them. Channel's one of the cards that got banned in, I think, just about every format. That's I don't think you're actually allowed to play Channel in just about most formats. Let's see. Let's go see if was it banned. Let's check that ban list. Yep. You cannot play Channel in EDH. So obviously not playable in EDH. And then I'm pretty sure it also got axed in a whole bunch of them. Let's look at the. So there is the only format you can play Channel in is Vintage, and it is restricted. So you only get one copy of the card in your entire deck. And the reason for this, and the reason they would even allow it once in Vintage, is just because it's Vintage and people have enough power cards in that format to actually handle this. It is you play a mountain, you play a Black Lotus. You sack the Black Lotus to get three green mana. You use that to cast your Channel. You pay 19 life, and you use the remaining 2 mana, the remaining green and red mana you can get from your mountain, to play a Fireball for 20 on turn 1. That's the combo. If you haven't seen it before, if you're newer to Magic, you've never heard of it, you're wondering why Fireball and Channel Fireball and Black Lotus is a big deal. This is why. And ultimately, it was such a notorious combo. We know of the company Channel Fireball, the gaming company out in California. They have been around for a very long time. Their name is a tribute to this combo, and this is a big power card. If this was allowed in EDH, it would blow some games out, and there's a very good reason it's banned. So that's all we have to say about that. Until end of turn, anytime you could activate a mana ability, you may pay 1 life. If you do, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. Yeah, Channel 2 green for that ability on a sorcery was busted, and there's a reason it is in the ban list prison. All right, let's move into. God, I think we're gonna get 2 more here. Chaos Lace. This is such garbage. This is again, R&D was still kind of finding its way back in the 90s. So there were some cards they made were relevant then and rapidly lost relevance over as time went by. Chaos Lace is an interrupt, aka instant. It is 1 red, and you can change the color of 1 card either being played or already in play to red. Cost to cast, tap, maintain, or use special ability of target card remains entirely unchanged. So you can permanently change the color of a card. It doesn't say until end of turn, pretty sure. Well, no, always check that Oracle text. But these cards, I'm pretty sure these were rare. And that was so sad. Because when very quickly you would find out. Yeah, Chaos Lace. You would see you'd open a pack of Revised, and you'd see this thing, and you'd be like, it's just so painful because it's at best it's sideboard, if that, and this is just no good. And you won't see these in EDH. I won't play them in EDH. Most people aren't playing these cards in EDH because they're just not worth it. They don't give you the benefit that you need. They're not doing anything substantial. So there's a good reason they cost 20 cents and are just a hot mess. And and rare. That was the hardest part. This was a rare, and it's so sad to pull this in a pack. So that's Chaos Lace, and let's go to one of the most famous cards outside of Black Lotus. Chaos Orb is a 2 mana artifact. It's a mono artifact. You pay 1, flip Chaos Orb onto the playing area from a height of at least 1 foot. Chaos Orb must turn completely over at least once, or it is discarded with no effect. When Chaos Orb lands, any card in play that it touches are destroyed, as is Chaos Orb. So this is what's called a dexterity card. This is something where a card needs to do something in excess of just sit there on the table and either tap or untap. They did away with dexterity cards a long, long time ago for very good reasons. It just there was a too much argument. People will like spread their cards out, and then maybe it would hit, maybe it wouldn't hit. The question, yeah, I'm sure there were plenty of debates on whether or not the pieces in question ever fully flipped over. The most notable legendary like fable about Chaos Orb is once upon a time in a tournament somewhere. I don't know exactly where. There are smarter people who know more about this than me if it actually did happen. But the story goes it was a critical moment in a tournament, and a player was playing Chaos Orb and needed to just wipe out his opponent's field. And he took the Chaos Orb and he ripped it into a bunch of little pieces and sprinkled it over the table. And that was that's a painful story to listen to when you see that a beta Chaos Orb goes for over $3,000, and probably the alpha goes for even more. And that's nuts. To oh my god, just the idea of like ripping up a card that it's just oh my god. So I'm gonna check because I believe it is not on the ban list for Commander, so you can technically play it in Commander. Um, I wouldn't advise ripping one up. I wouldn't advise flipping it onto the table unless you have it like triple sleeved. I wouldn't advise at a card. I honestly, let's face it, it's a fun effect. It's pretty funny to like take this card and use it in EDH and do that. But you're talking about a $3,000 piece of cardboard, and unless you are really confident you don't care what happens to that card and you've triple sleeved it, that's I wouldn't advise using this card in EDH just because that's a lot of money. There's going to be let me put a caveat on that. If you have the collection, if you have the cards to do this, good on you. If you've been collecting them over the years and you've had them forever, or you've found your way into a position where you can acquire these cards even in today's day and age. It's great to have them. It's great to play with them. I think it's great if people do play with them. I would not recommend taking this to just any local game store, and I would not recommend playing a card that costs as much as this in with people that you aren't familiar with, because there's a lot of risk there. And as much as we want to believe that our members of the gaming community are honest people and are really going to be looking out for each other, there's just you gotta watch out for number one sometimes. So when you've got a big, sweet, cool card like this, always take precautions. By all means, take precautions. Don't just play this with some basic generic sleeves, like single sleeves. Just no way. So cool card, cool power. I think it's definitely a fun card to play. I don't think it's as powerful as you would want something to be in EDH, especially when you've got a giant field of it's there's better things to do for 2 mana, I think. It's fun to play, neat idea, too expensive, and more there are other cards that do a better job, I think, than this. Okie dokie. So I think that's a good stopping point right there. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was helpful. By all means, if you have any questions, shoot me a question in the comments. I'll see if I can remember to. I'll check them out. But always, you can find me on Twitter at Johnny Slivers. And special thanks to all the websites to help us with finding all this information. Today we were leaning on Cardsphere and Scryfall for the most part. But yeah, here it is. This is episode 4 of Cackling Carnarium's EDH study hall wrapping up. I hope you had a great time. Until next time, have a great day, and may your top decks be epic.